Welcome to PRSay. This is the podcast for the Houston chapter of the Public Relations Society of America. I am your host, Veronica Sofer with Veronica V. Sofer Public Relations, and I have the honor of introducing you every week to fantastic members of our great chapter, because here at PRSay, we are trying to make sure we stay connected and we're growing our network of professionals so that you always have a circle of folks to reach out to anytime you're in need. So think of this as a virtual mixer. This is your opportunity to connect with members. If you are listening on the podcast, make sure you hit subscribe. We don't want you to miss any episodes of PRSay. And if you are watching on Facebook or YouTube, leave us some comments so my guest and I can connect with you and really grow our reach as well. So with that, I'm going to bring Mike Zientek onto the podcast. He is joining us today. Mike, thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, you're very welcome, Veronica. I've heard so many good things about PRSay, and I wanted to be part of it.
I love it. Well, Mike, tell us a little bit about yourself. First, I want to hear how you got started. I know you were a reporter in a former life, and you came over to the PR side, but how did this all start?
This really all started with my dad. He was the editor of the Texas Catholic Herald for the Archdiocese of Galveston, Houston, the Catholic Archdiocese here in Houston. And it was, he worked extremely hard. He was there for 34 years total, 26 as the editor. But the thing I noticed was after church, people would come up to him and comment to him about the stuff that was in the paper, whether they liked it or didn't like it. And I thought, telling people what's going on, whether it's in the Catholic world, secular world, it's important. But I always was attracted to video. I like the fact that video is it's like if you ask someone if there's a fire, most people are going to say, did you see it? They'll ask you that. They're not going to say, did you read about it? The eyes are very selfish. And so I love pictures and sound. So at UT Austin, I studied broadcast journalism, and my first job was in Victoria, Texas, second Brownsville, third Tucson. That was as far away from Texas as I wanted to go. Yeah. And so I came to San Antonio in 96, and I got back to Houston, KHU in 2000. And so I was a reporter for 15 years, and it was great. I mean, it was, it was a privilege to tell people stories. It was a privilege to report on things going on that mattered, that people needed to hear about. But then eventually you begin to think, okay, maybe I want to do something else. I feel a little bit burned out. I'm not going to lie. You'll hear that a lot from people in the television field. And so I'm like, well, now what do I do? Well, my brother was working for an engineering company called HNTB. And he said, hey, we got this big old Highway 290 project. We're helping TxDOT on it, and they need someone else in the outreach department. And I thought, well, geez, I don't know is that really me? How could I, only was a reporter. But the skills you have as a reporter translate. Breaking down complex pieces of information and making it easy to understand, using graphics, using video to explain it. Because you have business owners and residents, and they're like, well, what's the freeway going to look like? Oh, well, here's a map. That's fine. But what they want to see is a video, an animation showing them we can stop and freeze it. Here's where you are. Here's your business. Here's how high it's going to be. Here's how wide it's going to be. Mm-hmm. And so I realized that this really translates. And so I was with that company for a while, 13 years on one program. I asked the people who live in Cyprus, they'll tell you how long it took, but it got done. It got done. And so then the project stopped and there wasn't anywhere for me to go, but HillDay Public Relations is where I am now. And they needed someone to help my old company help TxDOT with the Interstate 45 project and a couple of other projects. So that's where I am now.
I love it. That's a great story. And just so you know, my folks are off 290. So for the majority of my adolescent life, that was absolutely true.
Yes, and you learn a lot. It's just, you see, there are all these things before the road actually gets poured. And it's stuff that folks, unless they're involved, they wouldn't know about. Utility relocation. I know that sounds boring. Oh my gosh, that is incredibly important. You have all these different players, Centerpoint, Comcast. There's a little company called Phonoscope that actually provides cable to apartment complexes still. They all have to get their stuff moved because it's not just the road. There's always 15 feet. Here I am going, but there's 15 feet that's for utilities. So it's for your utility poles, your phone lines, whatever it is. And there's stuff under the ground. There's so much under the ground. And so you can't even begin to build until you've moved them, acquired the land, if you're making it bigger, and then finally you can start building.
Yeah. No, that's a great gift that you have, Mike, to be able to very simply break it down for someone who, like you said, is interested in what it is they're interested in. How soon am I going to be able to get back on the road without this inconvenience, right? And that skill is so, so very important.
Yeah, it's very much, and we joke, and I had a lot of folks that we call return customers who I knew, and I still, and some of them, I gave my cell out. I did to those folks, and they would call me on the weekend, and I didn't have a problem responding to them. But it's kind of, Daddy, are we there yet? That's really, or Mommy, are we there yet? That's kind of
Yeah.
really what it was about. But to give an example, the kind of thing that, and then, again, we love our engineers. Without them, these things wouldn't get built, but they don't always speak the language of the people. For instance, if you're talking about how a road is built, and we see the top of it. Well, at the bottom, they've got, and this is how they would describe it: cement stabilized base, bond breaker, and then concrete on top. In
Yeah.
English, that is soil. Can't say dirt. The engineers get mad. Soil that's got cement kind of reinforced in it. That's at the bottom part. Because when they dig, it's like 3 or 4 feet deep. That's the bottom part. Then bond breaker, the common word for that is asphalt. And I say, and then you can put the concrete and the steel underneath it. And I say it's like a cake, but you can't eat it. And those are the kinds of things that you want to, because, let's face it, people say, well, you're in public relations. Oh, well, you're some kind of spin doctor,
Right.
and there's a
Right.
message you're trying to convince you want me to buy something. I'm like, no, what I'm trying to do is explain to you what is happening. And I live off 290 as well. And that was huge because I had two neighbors, a young couple, move in. And I hadn't even met them yet. And the neighbor across the street had told them, oh, he's on the 290 program. The construction was just wrapping up. So we had basically a meeting underneath a street lamp at 8:30
Yeah.
to explain to them what was going on. But again, in terms you can understand, the video, the animations are enormously important in seeing it. And you can stop and start them. And having the TV background, I remember I didn't build them, but I knew how I wanted them to look.
Yeah.
And I can tell you over and over again, in words and on a 2-dimensional map, what's going on. You're not really going to understand it until you see that animation, and I can stop and freeze it and point. And I would do that at presentations. You would run the animation, and since I'm only 5'6", I would actually have to jump sometimes to point to what I was explaining. But they get it. And even if people didn't like, they're like, we don't really like you making the road bigger or this, if you listen to them. And that is such a key in PR. Because we all want to talk. That I like to talk too, but listening is so important. And I found that even if people disagree with you, if you listen to them and give them a voice, they'll at least respect you.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That is so true. And, shifting gears just a little bit, you talked about transitioning from journalism to PR. And I would say that that's probably more true than ever, because in public relations, we're having to build stories. We're having to take into account our target audience, the tone, all the things you mentioned. And then your part of the job was also community engagement and making sure they had an opportunity to connect back with you to get their insight. Tell us a little bit about that transition before we wrap up, because I want to make sure that people don't miss how important that is and what it is we do.
Yes, the transition was scary. At first, it really was. I was out of work for 10 months, and you think you have a lot of money saved up. You really don't. But I didn't. I kept trying. Kept trying to get into television for 4 or 5 months.
Mm-hmm.
It's what I knew, and even though I was burned out, I thought, well, shoot, this is the only thing I can do. And then, I started hearing from people who had left, who I knew. These were people who I'd worked with in San Antonio and Arizona and Houston. And, I'm like, well, what is it? I can remember a couple of folks, and I talked to them on the phone and I asked them, what is it? How did you do it? Is it scary? And that's when I realized all these various skills that you have. Yeah. The ability to break down complex pieces of information, the ability to speak to people face to face, the ability to listen. You have all these skills. And you may not be in front of a camera or writing a story for the paper, for the internet, but you could still use them. And that really got me over the fear. And I finally accepted that television is done. It was a nice run, but it's given you things you need, tools to use, the cliche, tools in the toolbox for your next adventure.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what happened. And so when my brother approached me with that, mentally I was ready. I was like, this is, I've got these skills, I can use them. And for anyone out there who's in it, whether it's television or anything else, don't forget that you have skills coming from your current job, your former job, that you can use in your future job. And it's going to be, it is scary. It's a leap of faith, jumping into the deep end. I was terrified of jumping into 10, 12 feet of water for a long time. And then finally I did it years ago, when I was in elementary school, swimming lesson, but it's okay. Don't be afraid of the deep end. You've got the tools to swim.
Yeah. Oh, that's great advice. I love that advice, Mike. So how can people connect with you? I want to make sure that now that our chapter is having more in-person events, when people come up to you, how can they connect and reach you?
It's funny. We monitor social media. I'm not really that active on it. The one I'm the most active on is Instagram, Mike Zientek 2710. That's my Instagram handle. I post sometimes. I follow a number of folks, including people in TV. HillDay Public Relations, Hill, HillDayPR.com. We're right here at 59 in Kirby. So really Instagram. And then if you go to our website or you look us up, you can call here. We have 832, and I should remember it, but HillDay Public Relations. We are a small but growing company. And if you want to do the social media thing, I do have a Facebook profile. I think that's Mike's, and it's another odd number. I haven't customized those yet, but Mike Zientek 2710. I'm on Instagram. That would be the best way.
Awesome. And I'll make sure I put those in the show notes so people can just click the button and connect with you.
Please do, Veronica. This has been fun. No wonder people like podcasts so much.
It's a blast. It's a great way to get to know people. And it's especially great because our members are just, eavesdropping into our conversation as if we were at a mixer.
And that's fantastic. I'm so glad you guys did this. When I heard the concept, I'm like, this is awesome. It certainly was an idea whose time had come.
Oh, good. Well, I'm glad you're enjoying it. All right, Mike, thank you so much for joining us.
Veronica, thank you. You guys have a wonderful day, and we'll talk to you soon.
Great. Thanks. All right, everybody. That was Mike Zientek. Make sure you connect with him, HillDay Public Relations. We are wrapping up this episode of PRSay, the Houston chapter of Public Relations Society of America. This is our very own podcast. If you are listening on any podcast platform, make sure you hit subscribe. We don't want you to miss any episodes. If you are watching on Facebook or YouTube, drop us some comments and Mike and I will connect. And with that, we will see you next time.